Hello and good evening from George Innington, and welcome to the third episode of Piers Morgan Uncensored. If you like me or not, I'm always will appear every single Fridays starting from next week as we move into Fridays the episodes. But my guest for today is going to be the man, the president of this nation, the guy who actually runs this nation, Scott Drake. And he's going to speak to us about Donald Trump, the death of Donald Trump, about his ex-wife, Mrs. Drake. We're going to address all that right here, right now. So, Mr. Drake, Scott Drake, Mr. President, how do you feel? Thank you for being here. Thanks for having me, Piers Morgan. Thanks for having me on your show. It's my privilege to have you on the show there, Mr. Drake, Mr. President. I know that, of course, the last two episodes of my show not really got ending quite well with my two last guests, but today I know me and you've got a relationship anyway for a few years now. So let's talk more about your role in terms of your presidency, because we know that you took over the reins, obviously, of Donald Trump way back in 2021 when, obviously, Donald Trump was actually resigned as president. And then when the election happened in the new year in February, you came in. But how do you feel when you became the president of this nation, when you was actually elected by the most votes by all the Republican people? It was massive, it was for me. And also probably for my family and probably not. But look, I wanted to run for president. I got the credentials, obviously, from the past, being a local mayor in my local town. And obviously not having the support from my ex-wife, Mrs. Drake, was probably the toughest bit. But apart from all that, I think it was good for me to run for country of the RSV, because I think that this nation needs a new leader. And after what happened to Donald Trump, a guy who actually betrayed us all and said that he was going to war with Russia, wanted to try and end the whole citizens' lives, which shouldn't happen. It shouldn't be like this. It shouldn't be. And I think that right now it's good that we have this conversation rather than talk about all this. But I was good to be running for president. It's tough though at the same time, because I've got to look after these millions and millions and millions and trillions of people, and yourself also, Piers. But again, it's good to be running for president. It's good that I've got the power on things and decisions to make. It's tough as well at the same time, but I'll make sure that every time I'll get things right rather than wrong, like I've done the last couple of months before in this year. And now let's talk about you and your decisions, obviously, on Donald Trump. Although that Donald Trump was actually in prison for 2 years for what he did by a private government, and obviously we know that you gave him a second chance. Why didn't you give him a second chance? Because unfortunately it looks like it turned out to be him betraying you. At the time I didn't really know that he was going to be up for this. I thought he had his rehabilitation in prison to not do what he did and committed when he was actually out of the door. So, bribing the government was not very, very good in a way for him. He was in prison for 2 years. I thought he learned from those lessons. And that's why I put him under my wing since he released from prison. He's got the experience and the credentials to do things financially for our nation, to help us and help our government. And I thought he was a safe pair of hands because we couldn't find anybody else who's got that experience compared to Trump. That's why I put him under my wing. Like him or hate him, I had to try and build that relationship with him again. And that's what I did, because that's who I am. And I like to give people second chances. But unfortunately, he blew it, didn't he? What about your ex-wife, Mrs. Drake? We know that Mrs. Drake, however, was actually your wife and actually abandoned you when you actually run for president. And now she turned out the door, obviously like a couple of months before her death, and to have her to want a divorce on you. And then by behind having an affair with your ex-wife. How do you feel about it all in that situation? Well, it's something that, it's disappointing actually. And I was very angry, I was at her. And I was angry at Trump because he betrayed me. He betrayed my trust because I said to him, one mistake, then you're gone. And he didn't do that. And unfortunately, that was meant to be. And, you say a lot of rumours, people say that, I was responsible of the deaths of Donald Trump and Mrs. Drake. That, yeah, I was to a degree, because I wasn't the one who actually killed him. But I hired someone to actually kill and shoot on his birthday and assassinate him in his hotel, and that's what I did. I hired a hitman, I paid him $100 million, and then I told him to shoot him, the hitman, and he did. And he shoot them in his hotel, and also my ex-missus, that I really wanted that to happen as well, because of the way she treated me and how the way we had some issues, of course, in the past. And now, 3 months later, they're going to have a funeral today they're going to have. But this funeral particularly is going to be a hell funeral, meaning that the two bodies will be inside one casket, and that casket will be put into the pits of hell by today. Your children will be very devastated about you for what you did to their mother. Why do you do that for? Does your kids care about you? Or does she not care about her? What's the situation in your household in the Drake family? My kids didn't really care about it. My kids, however, said that, you did the right thing, Father, because the way when they grew up, her mother wasn't really there. Her mother was an alcoholic. Her mother was a person who never really picked them up from school. And a mother who never really looked after me, in fact, as running for this country. She's abandoned us and the family, and the kids really obviously rejected her as a part of the family, and that's why, I'm not really showing my kids on public television or any appearances whatsoever, but behind the scenes, they're not very happy they're not with her, and that's why, they said good riddance for not having, her mother around, and they don't really care. They got me, I got the money, I'm the leader, I got the power than everybody else, and that's what I did. And shooting Donald Trump and also Mrs. Drake after what she did by betraying, by having an affair behind my back, is unacceptable, and I'm very happy that I did what I did. Look, it's still wrong to actually kill your own mother or their children, despite, whatever you think about her, or even your children think about her, but shooting a human being and killing the mother of your children, you can't be ashamed of that. What are you trying to say, Piers? Nothing. I'm just wondering, that's all. But thanks for having us here, Mr. Drake, on our programme of Piers Morgan Uncensored. Thank you for being my third guest on the third episode of Piers Morgan Uncensored. And I wish you luck from running for president for this country also. Thank you very much. I appreciate that, Piers. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. That's all we have time for here today on Piers Morgan Uncensored. And we'll be back, of course, for the next episode here on episode 4 next week. As our guest for next week's Piers Morgan Uncensored, as we're going to have one of my best friends, one of the greatest players of all time, the GOAT, and the Georgington Red Devils forward, Cristiano Ronaldo, will be on the show. As he's got some things to say on Piers Morgan Uncensored. We're going to find it out next week what that's meant to be. But until then, for myself here today, Piers Morgan Uncensored, here tonight, good night, and we'll see you next week.